Calibra HQ, Old 4th Ward, Atlanta, October 2022. The aftermath. This is what a company looks like when one person decided she had to see all of it. The dashboard is still running. Nobody turned it off. 47 comments on one document, all from the same person. The thread stops in the middle of a sentence. Whoever was writing didn't finish, or decided it didn't matter anymore. Calibra was a software company that helped mid-sized banks and financial firms stay on the right side of the rules. Regulatory filings, audit trails, the kind of work nobody notices until someone gets it wrong. In 4 years, it grew to $9.2 million a year in steady revenue, what the business world calls ARR, annual recurring revenue. That number matters because it's the money that shows up every year without having to win new customers. It's the number that tells you a subscription company is alive. It did not collapse because the product failed. It did not collapse because the market moved. It collapsed because of a rule the founder made at 25, in a different city, in a different company, that she never stopped enforcing. That rule was rational when she made it. It had never once been wrong. That, it turns out, was the problem.
I built this company around one principle, that nothing, absolutely nothing, no client email, no proposal, no product decision above a certain threshold, left the building without my eyes on it. I didn't think of that as a control issue. I really didn't. I thought of it as a standard. The difference between a standard and a bottleneck is scale. I understood that intellectually. Turns out understanding it and applying it are two different things.
There is a word for what killed this company, and when you hear it, you will know it. Not because you've read about it, but because if you ever build something, there is a version of it waiting for you. You won't see it coming, because the thing that creates it feels exactly like the thing that made your company good in the first place. But to understand the word, you have to understand the day it was put in place. And that day was not in this building. That day was in a rented office above a dry cleaner on 19th Street in Washington, D.C., and the person who set it in motion was not Simone Okafor. DuPont Circle, Washington, D.C., 2012. Year 0. Simone Okafor studied systems engineering at Howard University. She had a specific talent. She could look at how a business ran and spot the weak point before anything broke. Like a mechanic who hears the engine knock before the light comes on. She spent a year at a financial services firm in D.C. watching mid-sized companies handle their legal paperwork through email chains and shared spreadsheets. She understood, early, that one missed filing away from a lawsuit was how these companies ran every day. She didn't start Calibra first. Before Calibra, she built something smaller. A 2-person consulting firm with a colleague named Nadia Cole, a systems analyst she'd met at the firm. They rented an office above a dry cleaner on 19th Street in 2012. They were 24 and 26. They were good together. Their first 8 clients came back. Their reputation in the DC financial advisory market was better than their pricing warranted. And then, in the spring of their second year, Simone took a train to New York for a 2-day client audit. She left Nadia with a draft report and a clear instruction. Hold it until I get back and we review it together. Nadia sent it. She checked it herself. She thought it was solid. She sent it 12 hours before Simone got back. Except there was a mistake. One paragraph used the wrong method for a specific kind of calculation. Not a wild guess, a standard approach applied to the wrong category. The kind of error a careful reviewer catches. The kind a busy reviewer misses. The client called Simone, not Nadia. Simone was the relationship. She took the call standing on the platform at Union Station and heard the word error, and something in her finished a calculation she hadn't started. Here is the thing to understand about what happened next, not just for this story, but for anything you will ever build. Everyone has a moment where someone else's mistake lands on their desk. And in that moment, a decision gets made. Not a dramatic one, a quiet conclusion. I should have been the one to check. That conclusion is not wrong. Sometimes it is exactly right, but it has no expiration date. And a rule without an expiration date will eventually run longer than the conditions that made it necessary.
I wasn't angry at Nadia. I want to be precise about that. I really wasn't angry at her. You see, she made a judgment call under real pressure, and a lot of reviewers would have missed what she missed. That wasn't the part that stayed with me. It was something else. The part that stayed with me is that I was the one who had to call the client back. I was the one who owned it, completely. And it wasn't an oversight. I hadn't seen the work. I had been very clear that I needed to see the work, and it went out anyway.
They lost the client. It took 3 weeks and a revised report, but they lost it anyway. The partnership held together for 4 more months. Then it dissolved without drama. The work had thinned. The trust between them had shifted in a way neither of them wanted to name. By November 2013, they had split the client list and moved on. She said 6 words before she left. "You can't review everything forever, Simone." Then she walked out. Simone moved back to Atlanta in 2014. She spent 18 months building Calibra's first version alone. The product, the pitch, the technical details. When she hired her first employee, she reviewed every piece of work they produced before it reached a client. When she hired her second, she did the same. She was not unreasonable about it. She did not believe she was controlling. She believed she had a standard. And the standard, for 2 years, was correct. Hold that. Not because it explains why she built the system, but because it explains why she never stopped running it. A rule that has been wrong at least once carries doubt. A rule that has never been wrong carries something heavier. It carries proof. What Nadia said that November was not an accusation. It was almost certainly meant kindly. But Simone heard it as a dare, and she spent the better part of 10 years winning it. Ponce City Market, Atlanta, Georgia. Q1 2017, Year 1. The hire. She hired Kwame Asante 11 months in. He was a product manager at a software company in Buckhead, earning a salary that made the Calibra offer make no sense on paper. He joined anyway. He had spent 2 years reading about how financial firms handled their legal paperwork. Simone's way of framing the problem was the only one he'd seen that had the cause and effect right. By the end of Year 1, Calibra had its first paying client, a small investment firm in Sandy Springs, and a product that worked. In Year 2, 12 clients, $2.4 million in steady yearly revenue, and a customer loyalty score, called NPS, Net Promoter Score, of positive 44. That's a simple measure of whether customers would tell a friend to use the product. Anything above 30 is strong. 44 meant clients didn't just like the product. They were telling other people about it. Simone reviewed every message that left the company, every proposal, every pricing request, every support question above a certain level. Her team knew this. They planned around it. And in Year 2, with 12 clients and 18 employees, planning around it was not a problem. It was a feature. The company produced work that clients praised by name. A CFO in Alpharetta told Simone directly that Calibra's work was the best she had seen from a software company. Simone knew exactly why. So did the team. The standard had a face and a name, and it sat in the corner office, and it read everything. Here's where the story turns, and it turns on something most people miss. The problem with being the quality standard inside your own company is that it works. It works right up until the company grows past the point where one person can hold it. Like a teacher who grades every paper in a class of 12. She knows every student, she catches every mistake. But the class is about to become a class of 40, and the method that made her great at 12 is about to make her a bottleneck at 40. Calibra reached that point in Year 3. Simone didn't notice when it arrived. The numbers looked clean. Clients were coming back. No complaints. Everything was moving the right way. But the numbers were not the whole story. October 2018, Year 3, Q2. Operational pressure. Year 3 looked, from the outside, like a company that had figured it out. 31 business clients. A customer loyalty score of positive 48, even better than the year before. The industry average for this kind of software was 29, and the average time from first conversation to a signed contract was 34 days. The numbers looked like traction. Actually, the numbers were hiding something that would take another 18 months to see. You might be wondering why nobody said anything. In fact, someone did.
The onboarding flow has been staged for 9 days. Dev is ready. If we don't push by Friday, we miss the Hargrove onboarding window.
I'll review it today.
You said that on Tuesday and Monday.
The onboarding flow is the first thing every new client touches. If something is wrong in it, we find out at the worst possible moment. I'm not pushing that live until I've been through it myself.
He was right about the pattern. She was right about the risk. That's the thing about this conversation. It had no resolution. Both of them were correct about different parts of the problem. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. Because the reason Simone couldn't hear what Kwame was telling her was not stubbornness. She had lived through the exact scenario he was asking her to allow. A piece of work leaving without her review, with a mistake inside it. She had a real memory attached to a real outcome. Every time someone asked her to let go, she could feel the weight of that phone call at Union Station. The impulse to check was not a habit. It was a scar doing the work of a policy.
I knew the pattern Kwame was describing. I could see it. What I kept coming back to was the founding logic. I had built this company specifically around the principle that one person signs off before anything reaches a client. That wasn't a habit I drifted into. I had decided it, consciously, with a reason behind it. And the reason hadn't stopped being true.
That's what made Calibra's version of this problem so hard to see from inside. Daniel Marsh, the founder from our last episode, drifted into recklessness almost without noticing. Simone Okafor never drifted anywhere. She was standing exactly where she had decided to stand. Knowing why you are doing something does not protect you from the cost of doing it too long. By year 3, the average time from first conversation to a signed contract was still listed at 34 days. But that number was already being pushed up by the same pattern Kwame had just described. Proposals needed Simone's sign-off before reaching a client. Pricing requests, present in nearly 40% of deals, needed her personal review. The sales team had learned, without a meeting and without a memo, not to send anything until they were sure it was perfect. Because anything less came back rewritten in red, and the rewrite took longer than starting over. Think of it like a highway with a single toll booth. When there are 12 cars a day, the wait is nothing. When there are 40, the line stretches back a mile. The toll booth hasn't changed. The traffic has. And the delay doesn't show up in your toll receipts. It shows up in how long people waited before they got to you. By year 4, that wait time would be impossible to ignore. Festbrook Financial, Buckhead, Atlanta, December 2018. The observation. Festbrook Financial had been a Calibra client since year 2. 400 filings a quarter through the platform. A yearly contract worth $360,000. Renata Bloom ran their operations. She was precise and said what she saw rather than what was comfortable. She told Simone the platform was doing its job. Then she raised something else. Her team had been reaching out to Calibra's support team on basic questions, nothing urgent. And 9 times in the past quarter, the answer was some version of the same sentence. We'll check with Simone and get back to you. Her team had started building their schedules around Calibra's response time. The response time changed from week to week in a way that was hard to plan for. Renata was not filing a complaint. She was asking whether there was something built into the system she should plan for on her end. Simone told her that her direct involvement was by design. She would rather her team confirm an answer than send one that was wrong. Renata said she understood that. But her question, she said, was about the structure, not about answer quality. Simone left the meeting with a note that said, "Client flagged response latency. Managing expectations." Most viewers stop at this answer. Don't. Because Simone's note tells you everything about how this company would end. She heard feedback about a structural problem. The company could not answer a basic question without one person's approval, and she filed it as a communication issue. Like a doctor hearing a patient describe chest pain and writing down, "Patient reports discomfort."
Renata wasn't wrong. I understood what she was describing. What I heard was, your quality bar is creating friction. And my interpretation of that was, well, yes, that's the point. Friction in the wrong direction is a feature. I thought I was choosing friction over error.
She was. The question she wasn't asking was whether there was a way to build the company, on purpose, with a plan, where she could hold the standard without being the standard. That was the business problem. But there was a culture problem already growing beneath it, and it would show up in a way that no dashboard tracked. Calibra HQ, Old Fourth Ward, Q1 2019, Year 4. In Year 4, Simone hired a Chief Operating Officer, a COO. That's the person who builds the systems that let a company run without depending on any single person. The right move for a company at this stage. Except the right hire and the willingness to use them are two separate decisions. Calibra only made one of them. Victor Mensa had managed operations at a mid-size consulting firm for 6 years. By the end of his third week, he had mapped every approval path in the company. Every road led back to one box on the chart. He prepared a plan. The average time to close a deal had stretched from 34 days to 67. But what Victor could see from the floor, something that no screen would show him, was that the team had stopped expecting things to move faster. They had shaped their entire way of working around the bottleneck. Like a neighborhood that builds its morning commute around a broken traffic light. After a while, nobody remembers the light was ever working. That is when a bottleneck becomes permanent. Not when the founder builds it, when the team forgets it wasn't always there. September 2019, Year 4, Q3. Authority gap. Victor presented his plan 3 months in, a layered approval system, routine client messages handled by team leads, pricing requests above a set amount sent to Simone, below it, handled by the sales director through a clear set of rules. A standard document. Calibra's size called for exactly this. She read it with the pen in her hand. She asked, who decides what counts as routine? Victor said the sales director, using the rules. She asked, who approved the rules? He said she would. She asked what happens when something comes in that the rules don't cover. He said she gets it. Simone told him they were describing the current system with extra paperwork. Victor told her they were describing a system where her team could handle a defined set of decisions without waiting for her. That's not paperwork, he said. That's giving people authority. She looked at him and asked one more question. What happens when something in that set turns out to be wrong? Pay attention to what just happened because most people miss it. Victor's plan was not the current system with extra paperwork. It would have moved a real portion of decisions off Simone's desk for good. He had described it right, but every branch in his diagram was a point where something could be decided without her. And Simone had built this entire company to prevent exactly that. She had a reason. The reason had a name. The name was a woman who sent a report to a client on 19th Street in 2013. And Simone was still, 8 years later, making sure it didn't happen again. If you ever build something, a company, a team, a product, you will have a moment like this. Someone will come to you with a plan to take a piece of the work off your hands, and you will feel in your body the pull of every time it went wrong when you weren't watching. The question is not whether the plan is good. The question is whether you can tell the difference between protecting your company and protecting a wound.
Victor understood the business problem exactly right. I knew that. I kept revising his proposals. I kept finding things I wasn't willing to delegate. And eventually he understood that I wasn't going to approve anything that moved real decision authority away from my desk. He got quiet. And then he resigned.
4 months. He submitted his resignation in the third week of October. He didn't give the real reason in the meeting. He had understood by then that the real reason was not a conversation Simone was ready to have. If you're planning to build a company, here is the question your plans almost certainly aren't answering yet. How many decisions per day can you personally review before the company stalls? Write that number down. Now look at your growth plan. Find the month where the company's decisions will pass that number. That month is when your greatest strength becomes the thing that slows everything down. If you don't have a plan for that month, you are building a company that will hit a wall you designed. Tuesday, April 7th, 2020. The silence. Kwame Asante had been at Calibra for 4 years. He had shipped 11 major product features, managed a team of 7, rebuilt the client onboarding system twice. The second rebuild he did without sending it for review first, because the first time, the review took 3 weeks. By then, the client had started using the old version by default. He got an offer from a larger software company in March. He accepted it on a Tuesday morning before anyone arrived. He told Simone it was a chance he couldn't pass up. She said she understood. He was gone by April. What he hadn't told her was the real reason, which was not the salary. It was something simpler and harder to say. For 2 years, he had watched every piece of work he built sit in a line, waiting for comments in red, and had reached a quiet conclusion. He was not able to do what he was best at inside a system that needed one person's permission for everything. It was like being a chef in a kitchen where every plate had to be tasted by the owner before it went to the table. He could cook, he just couldn't serve.
When Kwame left, I told myself he'd found something bigger. That was true. There's a version of that sentence, though, that means something else. That I gave him reasons to look. I understood it too late.
Here is where the data starts telling the story the people had been living for 2 years. Churn is the word for customers leaving. It measures how many clients walk away each year. In year 3, Calibra's churn was 8%, manageable. By year 4, 18%. By year 5, 31%. Nearly 1 in 3 clients leaving every year. The bathtub filling and draining at the same time. There's another number that matters here. Every company spends money to win a new customer. That cost is called CAC, Customer Acquisition Cost. Think of it as the price of getting someone to walk through the door. In year 2, it took Calibra 14 months of that customer's payments to earn back what it cost to win them. By year 5, it took 29 months. The door was getting twice as expensive to open, and the people who came through it were leaving before the cost was paid back. One more number. This one tells you whether the customers who stay are spending more or less over time. It's called Net Revenue Retention, NRR. If it's above 100%, your existing customers are growing with you. Below 100, they're pulling away. The healthy target for this kind of company is 105% or better. Calibra's net revenue retention had fallen from 108% to 79%. Below 100 means the company is making less money from the customers it already has than it did the year before. New clients could not cover the gap. Festbrook Financial sent a notice that they would not renew in the second quarter of year 5. Renata Bloom's message was 2 sentences. Their exit survey had 1 line that the account manager read twice. Structural uncertainty about who at Calibra is authorized to make decisions. They had been saying it for 18 months, but now they were saying it with their contract. August 2021, Year 5, Q3. Critical threshold. A company that had been growing was shrinking by every measure that predicted the future. Clients leaving faster. New clients not arriving fast enough to replace them. And the time from first conversation to signed contract still sitting at 67 days. 2 months to close a deal for a product with no major competitor in the Southeast. 2 months because every proposal needed one person's review. 11 days on the stack. The line of deals stalled at 67 days. And still, the red pen. Still the inbox. Still the same rules Simone had made in a rented office in DuPont Circle 8 years before. If you only remember one part of this story, remember this part. At some point in year 5, that phrase, the standard, began a second life. Not inside Calibra, outside it, in the financial services community across Atlanta. Former clients had started using it, but they were using it as a joke. Oh, that's not the standard. Meaning work that was technically correct but delivered past the point when being correct still mattered. Simone's own words running in reverse. The market had taken her phrase and flipped it. The founder does not choose the ironic version. They hear it from the outside.
Someone mentioned it at an industry event in Midtown, casually. They didn't know it was my phrase. They didn't know I was in the room. I drove home and sat in the parking garage for a long time because I understood something I hadn't let myself see. The market had already figured out what was wrong with us before I had. And what was wrong was that the thing I built this company around, being careful, being thorough, being the last set of eyes on everything, had become the reason people couldn't work with us. The thing I keep returning to is, I was right about the risk. The risk I was managing was real. I saw a piece of work leave a client without my review, and I owned what happened next for years. I built a system to prevent it from happening again, and for 4 years, the system worked. It got us a customer loyalty score of 48. It got us a CFO in Alpharetta who said we were the best vendor she'd worked with. The system worked, and then it kept working. Past the point where it was solving the original problem. Past the point where it was helping at all. And I couldn't stop it, because every time I thought about changing it, I could picture exactly what Nadia had sent, and I could hear exactly what the client had said. And the case for not changing anything was as strong as it had ever been.
Everyone has made a rule for themselves after something went wrong. Don't trust that kind of person. Don't take that kind of risk. Always check twice. And most of the time, the rule helps. It keeps you from repeating the mistake. But the rule doesn't know when to stop. It doesn't check the calendar. It doesn't ask whether the conditions that created it still exist. It just runs. What Simone had built, without naming it, is something I want to give you a name for. Because it happens in more companies than the failure rate suggests. And it is invisible from inside. Because the thing that creates it looks and feels exactly like the thing that originally made the company good. The control ceiling. Here is what it means. The control ceiling is the point where a founder's direct oversight stops making the company better and starts making it slower. Below that point, the founder's involvement is a real asset. Errors caught, standards held, culture anchored. Above it, the same behavior creates a different company. A company where deals take twice as long, where the team has learned it is not allowed to decide anything without asking, where the whole operation runs on one person's hours instead of its own strength. Think of it this way. You're painting a room. When the room is small, one person with a brush does a better job than 3 people rushing, but the room keeps growing. At some point, one person with a brush is not careful, they're just slow, and the walls are growing faster than you can paint. The control ceiling is invisible from below. That is not the flaw, it is the feature. The behavior that creates it feels exactly the same whether you are under it or over it. The signal that tells you which side you're on comes from your customer loss rate, your deal timeline, your best employee's resignation letter, not from your own sense of how things are going. And this is what made Simone's version so hard to escape. She had a reason, a real one, a specific one, a reason she could say in one sentence. Most founders who build a control ceiling drift in by habit or insecurity. They don't notice. Yet Simone walked in deliberately, eyes open, with a reason in her hand. And the reason was correct. It never stopped being correct. That is exactly why she couldn't leave. The trap that is waiting for you, if you build something, is not the version of this story where you drift into control without noticing. That version is easier to catch. The trap is the version where you have a real reason, where the standard you set at the beginning actually works, where the evidence supports you. Because a reason that was right at one scale does not announce when it stops being right at the next one. It just keeps sounding right, and you keep listening. The company was sold in year 6. A valuation is the price tag investors put on a whole company, what they think it could be worth. At its peak, Calibra's price tag was between $32 and $37 million. It sold for $4.1 million. 89% of its value, gone. Simone was not part of what came after. Simone Okafor has since started over. Not in tech, not in compliance. She runs a small crochet goods business out of her home in West End. Patterns, kits, finished pieces. A small but loyal customer base she built without outside money and without a team. She fills every order herself. She photographs every product herself. She answers every customer message personally within the hour. She also volunteers with a founder mentoring program at a co-working space on Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard. Early-stage founders, first or second year, people who've worked with her in that program say she is very precise about exactly where a founder's direct involvement creates value and where it starts consuming it. She can see the control ceiling forming in someone else's company from the first conversation. She names it early, directly, and correctly. She still fills every order herself. These failures rhyme. The more of them you've seen, the sooner you catch the next one forming. Subscribe, we take one apart every week. 2 lessons from what you've just watched. The first is about how companies work. The control ceiling doesn't appear as a warning in your numbers or a flag in your reports. It appears as a deal timeline that keeps stretching a little longer each quarter. Or as a COO who resigns 4 months in without telling you the real reason. Or a VP of product who finds another job and never tells you that you gave him reasons to look, and you don't see it. By the time those signals become a pattern, the ceiling has been in place for years. The question to ask yourself, whether you are running a company now or planning to build one, is not how much you review. It's whether your team can make a standard decision without you. If the answer is no, you are not running a team. You are the entire decision layer for every part of the company. And that does not grow. The second thing is harder. Simone's version of the control ceiling was not a bad habit or a character flaw. It was a specific, reasoned response to a real experience. She had been held responsible for work she didn't review. She resolved never to let that happen again. And for 4 years, that decision was exactly right. It was disciplined. It was correct. It got a customer loyalty score of 48. It got a CFO in Alpharetta who said Calibra was the best vendor she had ever worked with. It got 12 clients, then 31, then 47. The system worked. Every single time she ran it, it worked. The problem was not the decision, it was the expiration date she never set on it. The lesson is not that she made the wrong choice in 2013. She made the right one. But she applied it permanently, across every scale, as if the conditions that made it right would never change. The rule was built for a 2-person firm. The rule ran a 40-person company. And the rule had never once been wrong. Which meant there was no evidence inside the system that the system needed to change. Most of what breaks founders breaks them at exactly this seam. Not at the moment of a bad decision. At the moment a good decision outlives the conditions that made it good. Her sister Jade told me something. She said Simone used to call her during the worst years, late after 10 on a Sunday, and describe everything that had crossed her desk that week. Every document she'd reviewed, every error she'd caught, every proposal she'd sent back. She needed Jade to hear the list, to confirm that it had mattered. Jade said she always listened. She never told her sister to let go. She knew better. But she told me that after the sale, after everything, Simone called her from a parking garage at midnight. She wasn't crying, she just said she was right. Jade didn't ask who, she already knew. She'd known for years that somewhere in that story there was a person Simone had never been able to stop answering. She just said, I know. Simone agreed to answer your questions. Leave them in the comments. Anything about the company, the decision, the system she built, the moment she understood what it had cost her. She will read every single one. She has promised to respond to each of them personally. Thoroughly, without exception. She called it the standard,